and I already hit the gym this morning.
Look at you
Already did the
go.
laundry. So now I can get my hair done, do these recordings, and get to Disneyland.
I
All
think
by
it's
three.
GTL, Gym Tan Laundry, so you
Well,
forgot the tanning
GT.
PCL.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know what
I tanned yesterday. I tanned
Alright,
yesterday, and I'm golden, ready for MRC. But this one today is it's a GTD, Gym
go
Tan
to
Disney.
Disney. Go to
I did
Disney.
do laundry this morning though.
Look at you, so mature, so adult-like. What is going on, everyone? It is another episode of This Week in the House of Fraud, where Jordan and I kind of recap what the community is talking about this week. What's happening with you today?
It's been a really busy week. A lot of stuff's happening in the fraud world. I will say in the community has been extremely active this week. I've been getting a lot of
Yep,
notifications. But what I wanted to start with, and we haven't talked about this, so I'm just kind of going to throw you back under the bus again,
let's do it.
is we've been talking about the scam stuff. There's a big thread happening about pig butchering scams and all of that. And Dougie Fresh on there has been very active in putting a lot of good information. And now I'm not going to go through his whole list because if you want to know his whole list, I recommend you send for the House of Fraud and read it. But he went to a panel hosted by Dados Insights, Julie Conroy, who is a friend of mine. She's been on my show. She's pretty plugged into what's happening especially in the world of faster payments,
Yep.
but mostly in fintech crime and whatnot. So did you see this one?
I'm looking through it now, yeah.
It's huge. So basically, as we've talked about on this very show before, what do we do with scams and people that are adamant that they're like sending money to Keanu Reeves? Like I've talked about it before. Like, at what point do we have to say, hey, the consumer is actually on the hook? And there's a new one that came out today. A gal in the Midwest just sent $1 million to one of these people, probably in Southeast Asia, as it says in the article. But I thought it was some really interesting things that some of the more hands-on bankings or financial institutions are doing. And two things really stood out to me. One of them is they are saying, like the words of line, real-time payments don't need to be real time. And I don't like that. I'm going to be the guy that says I don't like that. I don't think that slowing down payments is the correct answer. I think the technology needs to be better through the payment cycle, because the point of faster payments is to be instantaneous. And
Yep.
that's why we want to do it. If we wanted ACH, we could have just kept trucking on ACH for the rest of time. So I don't agree with that one. And then the second one is, and it even says it's not a scalable solution, but one of the banks is actually sending people that are caught in a scam to a psychologist. So they're intercepting the scam and then sending them to a psychologist who is doing the mental work to help them understand that they are being scammed. Because they're adamant, which it even says, like, they're adamant that they're not.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people are adamant that they're not being scammed. Um, so thoughts about that? And there's one more huge thing that I want to talk about later in this. So what are your
Well,
thoughts
we
about
just
those things?
had a coffee chat in the community, kind of more informal, bringing people together. And there were two topics that people will really bring up. Scams being one of them. One thing of like, hey, how do we talk about scams on our family? Like at the dinner table was one. But to your point of like the psychologist piece of, I don't know where it came from, but there was one of these, again, it was someone walked through an example flow of like the example flow. There was a questionnaire of, would you fall for a scam? And almost everyone was adamant that they were like, no, I
That's what I want
won't
to
fall
talk
for
about
a scam.
later.
However,
Yes.
the next follow up question to it was, have you ever fallen for a scam? And the difference was drastic. The majority
Yeah.
of the respondents of whatever this was from said, yes, I've fallen for a scam. First question was, no, I won't fall for a scam. Third question was, will you fall for it again? And the answer is, no, I won't fall for it again. So there's
Yeah.
this, I think I don't, it's hard of like, if someone's unwilling to accept or acknowledge that there is a problem here, it's hard to force someone to go to a psychologist, whether it's virtual, whether it's physical, whether it's group, whatever it may be. It's very hard to get someone to commit to that and move forward. So I'm hesitant of like, is that the right path forward? Maybe in some situations, but I believe that that would go well beyond like just falling for a scam and fraud. I my gut is like, there's more happening in
Yeah.
the outside of life and world, not just this one single incident for that to be the outcome. A lot of the discussion also went like for people who work on the fintech side, a lot of like customer education. Even on like the e-com side, people like, how do you prevent first party fraud? How do you prevent friendly fraud? How do you prevent people going to dispute chargebacks right away? It's like customer education. And it's like, do you have customer education? Yes. Do you think it's great? Do you think it's working? Do you read it? Would it help you? And a lot of the questions or responses were, no,
Yeah.
I don't
So I
think it
guess,
helps.
and I think that that's a good point too, because the education piece is even in this list over here. But that thing that you just said was in the list too, which I think is a brilliant way to frame it. Um, is those emails that say don't fall victim to scam this summer, that come out aren't really that help. They doesn't really say the why, of what's happening. And I think like real world examples, I think are always the one that really catch the people's attention the most. So if you could say, like even numbers, like $30 billion have been lost to Keanu Reeves alone this summer, like he's a very popular guy and he's made a lot of money. But having stories that like people could be like, oh, this sounds like it happened to me. So another example is right now this week in LA, we had it was on the news. They had these PDFs that are coming out that are it's like they come into your email. It's a PDF, but it says, I caught you. It's a typical one. We've seen it before. I caught you doing something you're not supposed to be doing, whether that be sexual act or something like that. And I'm going to tell everybody unless you pay me a Bitcoin. And then
Yeah.
what they started doing now is they started including a picture from Google Street View of your house on that, that's easy information to find. Like you can find anybody's address. That's super easy to find. So not be scared. But like my best friend in the whole world sent me, he's like, bro, he's like, you're never going to believe it. Someone caught me. He's like, check this out. And then he tries to send me the PDF. And I was like, first of all, no, don't ever send me a PDF ever. And I was like, don't open a PDF because that can execute code and that can put a keylogger. Like he thankfully tried to do it on his iPhone. So he's probably safe. But I was like, please don't do that. And I was like, but this is a common thing. Like just Google it. And then that same day, it hit my local neighborhood Placentia Buzz, our little Facebook group, same person, same email, same everything, same stuff going on the news. Thankfully, everybody in there was like scam, 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 scam.
Yeah.
But like, it's just these things, the people that think that they're super aware of these things are not, because there needs to just be more examples instead of just don't fall for fraud. But it used to be like, don't fall for someone sending you an email saying they caught you doing something, you're not supposed to be doing or something like that, or like, people saying that they need $20,000 when they live on an oil rig to get their phone back online isn't common. I think there needs to be more real world stories like that.
Well,
Like, what do
the
you
hard
think?
part to there where I go is every company is going to have this whole scope of nuances of like the different types of scam, different types of text messages, different types of emails, invoices. We would never send you this channel to communicate. It works to a certain point, but again, it's like, think about the speed, the urgency, you slip up, you're a lot of happening. You're rushing, you're fumbling from doing your laundry, your hands are full, you're trying to get out the door to go to Disney. You get an email, you open it up by accident, and there you go. So it's not necessarily just goes down to like the specific example. It's not always like you are refreshing your
Yeah.
Rolodex of scam examples when you're flustered, frustrated, tired. And that really kind of becomes the hard part. I think operationally, the people who are doing the education, if you are talking about all these specific events, then it's like, how many nuances of education campaigns of specific incidents do I have to share out before that becomes noise and ignored? And then my audience still gets hit. So there's like, I always go back to like, what is like the true balance between executing on education versus educating just to check the box?
Yeah. One of the other things too that is it's in this too is, and I think that we're still pretty shitty at it on our industry, is like getting the taxonomy correct on like what we
Yeah.
call different types of things.
I
It
always
gives an
say fraud experts have more fun fighting what we call types of fraud than actually the fraud itself.
yeah, and I think like finally we've landed on pig butchering for the scams overall, the romance scams at least. Um, And
I've been seeing lately that people hate the word now pig butchering and they want to call it something else because
mm,
of blah, 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 blah.
I mean,
I
romance
saw,
scam just sounds, I think, is a really good name overall for it because it says what it is. And like back in my old days when I used to be doing consulting stuff, they always like your company name needs to say what you do. You know, that's like the best way to do it. And like I know there's all these fun little companies that like leave out a lot of vowels and whatnot. Is mostly because there's another company called that. Like a company name that says what it
it's
does
hard
is
buying domains
successful.
nowadays.
It really is. Yeah. But I think that that's one thing is we need to, maybe we could do that with House of Fraud. Maybe we could start an official term glossary list that, like Urban Dictionary, where you can vote up and down. We could do something
I'll
like
figure out how
that.
to build that. We have, there's a Google Doc of the fraud taxonomies, and it's kind of categorized by different like events of the customer journey. And people have access to it and are able to comment and add different bits. And there's warning signs included within it. So it is a resource within there. Some people are more active within it than others, aka Jordan. And that might be a place to start.
That might be a good spot to start. Yeah. Um, what else you got this week?
Uh, I just feel like there's questions in here. I've had a couple private questions, like not within the community, but Brazilian chargebacks, just Brazilian fraud.
Interesting.
The last like week, and I feel like I've been heads down, like tactical within it too, in a lot of the conversations I've been having. So I, a couple companies ago, Brazil was one of our larger markets. It was for a recurring subscription company, and it just was the one that had it wasn't our biggest traffic because we were US domestic, but it had a large enough volume that our chargebacks there did fit within the 80/20 rule. So it had a huge impact to our chargebacks. And just, it was like every time I thought I had it under control, some cultural difference, currency difference, political environment
That
would
one's a
change.
wild market.
And then that just would change everything. Crime rates, there'd be a huge crime spree and like across the country. And then we would see chargebacks. So there are all these elements that would in influence, like impact our chargeback rate. That was like, I'm doing my best. We, at the point, we're working through localization. So there was a little bit of loss in translation. We were working on price localization as well and pricing models and payment methods. So as we did that, that helped a lot once we like progressed through those. But I'm having a lot of those similar conversations. And it's like, when I think about like the fraud, reoccurring fraud parts of my career, like that's the one I usually go back to of we did so much there and we made nothing had like a major impact. It just was like a lot of small incremental wins, which use a lot of my own asks internally
Yeah.
of making the work an impact on that. And it just kind of like made impact, not the impact that like the company was hoping for. And just kind of like we keep needing to do these things. And some were in the big piece that kind of helped because it was like friendly fraud and chargebacks. And that was in influencing our churn rate. We're huge on churn. That was a big way for me to continue to get support and buy-in because it was something I was able to roll up to one of our like one of two North Star company metrics. I was able to find ways to impact that. So that is how I continue to get resources. But for the beginning, until I was able to like really connect the dots for people of how to connect the churn, it just was like nearly impossible. So I feel like I'm having a lot of like these repeat conversations that are bringing me back to this role that just was like I'm burnt out from, and now
Yeah.
I'm reliving it.
Flashbacks, fraud
Yep.
PTSD.
Yep.
Uh, I mean, Brazil's always a super challenging market just because of what it is. I would say that Pix has helped out a lot at the end of the day. And, historically we've had to do like merchant and record acquiring down
Yep.
there because we don't, it's, you have to make sure it's really worth your while to set up a full business. But, the merchant and record acquiring gets to be challenging too, because they don't always understand you as a
Yep.
business and they have their opinions on what you should be doing. But with Pix, it's helped out a lot getting that liability shifted off of merchants while tying it more to an individual customer. So it's all QR code based. One of the things that always
Yep.
sucks too is like doing like refunds on Boletos. That's something that's come up recently with us is like, these people they do a Boleto, then they go pay it at the bodega, and then they cancel their order and they want a refund. It's like, what's the logistics of that? When Pix, at least we can push the payment back if we need
Yeah.
to.
I mean, your physical goods. So physical goods also plays in another nuance within shipping times, warehouse. I don't know your guys'
It's
size,
hard
but
for
I
us to
imagine
get product
warehouse. So
there. Well, yeah, and then we have to do customs duty and tax down there in
yep.
that region, which can change overnight, depending on who's in charge down there. So, yeah.
Yeah. Brazilian chargebacks is really kind of where I'm going to. The other thing of just like network in general. A huge piece, obviously, of like the community portion of it is bringing the fraud community together, especially with conferences coming up and some people not being able to attend that might usually attend them or for whatever
Hmm.
reason, tighter budgets, change of roles, and feeling left out. There's been like a lot of a handful, I won't say a lot, a handful of like little micro, like I did a coffee chat. There's a wine night being set up, and then a couple like informal chat hangouts. So like people are craving attention and meetup, and conference seasons give a little bit of FOMO. So there is like the ability to bring and connect people. That's the power of something like this. But again, must be another round of layoffs. I haven't been paying as closely
Hmm.
to layoffs the past month or two within the summer, but I'm seeing an influx of inbound just via LinkedIn of people requesting connections, how to connect with people, advice on who to connect with at certain companies. I usually see these when there's big name companies that
Yeah.
have layoffs, and just some of the topics I do talk about of navigating the business, building relationships, and expanding your own network. 'Cause the network is where your power lies. That's your influence. That's your support. And I'm getting a lot of that lately. So people are craving attention because of conference season coming up and not everyone being able to attend conferences that they may have been able to attend in the past. Maybe some vendors aren't footing the bill like they used to.
Yeah.
Smaller conferences. There's a couple thoughts I've heard from people, but then from the LinkedIn side, like I see that during layoffs. I just haven't paid close attention the past month or two on the layoffs. So um, I'm always talking it feels like I want to meet someone who knows X or does X or is at this company doing this job. How do I meet someone? So I've been working kind of with people putting together these like little plans of like how to break into companies of like finding the person you want to talk to, finding people who might be able to introduce you, how you like approach messaging people, like the
Okay.
copy right into it, and kind of like the different steps of standing out. So you're not the person who writes 17 paragraph essay that I look on my phone that I it uses all my battery power as I scroll through. And then you attach your resume at the end, hoping that I read that or send it to someone, or that I'll even open as a PDF.
If
Are
I
you going to
can't read
open
it
the
in like 2 lines on any LinkedIn message, like, if I have to scroll in any way, there's like a 90% chance I'm never gonna reply to you. I'd say there's a 99% chance,
I
especially if
read
I
the
don't recognize
I
you.
read the bottom. So it's like the way you got to think
I
about it
just
is
got
like
one right now while we've been on this call, like, some lady, she's like, "I think" well, similar results to iHerb, "I think it's worth chatting." I bet she does.
yeah.
Like, that's how you
But
do it, like, you
what the people don't really think about, they write it like an email. An email, you get the subject line and the preview text. So you're starting top down. That's like your hook and you write down, that's the context. In a LinkedIn message, you start at the bottom. You see the sign off and then the question. And so you write it in reverse. So when you're on LinkedIn, you're trained to read it like an email, but you're viewing it long like a text message. So you got to write them if you're on LinkedIn. Assume everyone's mobile. I at least have analytics of how people view my posts. So I am able to see the majority of people consume my content on mobile. So if I'm going to message people, then I have to think about they're reading on
What it
their
looks like
phone,
on
how it
mobile.
pops up, and it just needs to be this quick little snapshot. So also if you're like, I will admit it, I am like a three texter of like thoughts of like thought, text, thought, text, thought, text, instead of like the one big bubble. That also impacts how it sends on LinkedIn too. So my brain might send a couple text messages that again still is broken up at the bottom, despite sending it that way. So no matter how you send it, you just got to think about the other party, how they're receiving it. And the brain automatically filters this out. Like you look at that, the first line, you're like, spam, sales, not responding to
Yep.
this. If I look at this and the last thing I see is resume, hey, do you know anyone you can introduce me to? You're not making an effort to connect with me, learn. Like I'm pretty easy to meet with almost anyone searching for a job, early, late, vendor, non-vendor, merchant, like trying to transition from other areas, trying to learn about products out there. Like I'm pretty easy to schedule time with unless you just shoot me a like long paragraph. My brain, like you got to think about what my inbox looks like.
I
I have a lot of inbox like messages that I try to get through. I have a goal of trying to get to them on at least a weekly basis. But if I get a whole bunch in a little bit, I'm going to respond to the ones that are the easiest to respond with as quickly as possible.
well, I mean, right now the conference season with 2 conferences back to back, everybody thinks that they have the best product and they want part of my time. I mean, if I drank that much coffee, I would probably die for how many people that want to have a coffee meeting with me. But I will, like, I stay pretty plugged in with what things do. So, I will reach out to them or I'll impromptu get time. So everybody stop fucking messaging me every 2
It's always
seconds.
the value. I mean, at least once a week, there is someone asking about a vendor, a specific vendor, or looking for options of vendors who solve specific problems in the community. So, because no one goes to school for fraud, so growing a career in fraud is nearly impossible. So, if you want to be a part of these conversations and not just hear about them from Jordan and myself, hit apply. See you on the other
I'm going to a Chase ATM now. Bye, everybody.
side.